Trigger warning for this whole video is that because the three-body problem has some seriously disturbing scenes. Now, the disturbing scenes in the three-body problem, the Netflix series, are the least disturbing thing about the three-body problem. The stories behind the three-body problem need a trigger warning. Okay. Also, spoiler alert, trigger warning and spoiler alert. Okay, for those unfamiliar, The Three-Body Problem is a Netflix show. It was an adaptation from a science fiction novel by this Chinese author called Lin Qi. The television show is about a group of scientists and black ops, and they're trying to prevent this alien invasion. It starts as a detective show, and they're trying to solve a series of bizarre scientist deaths, mostly by the scientists unaliving themselves. You can't say the S word or the half-wit algorithm will block your content, even if the S word is only to describe the plot. Now, adults with mortgages have to say unalive. I am somebody's mother, and I am speaking to American taxpayers, and I've got to talk to you like I'm a kindergarten teacher. We're not a serious people. The algorithm is not serious. Back to the three-body problem. In the book, the story follows an engineer who's tasked with investigating the various unalivings by scientists. There is a Chinese version of the series based on the book, and that premiered last year in 2023. We're talking about the one produced by Netflix that's streaming for English language viewers. Okay. Maybe I'll do a side-by-side comparison, but to me, that's like the fourth, fifth, sixth most interesting part of the story. This video that I'm making right now, that you are watching right now, deals with the first three most interesting parts to me. Now, the Netflix version is produced by the Game of Thrones creators, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Now, I watched their version of the three-body problem despite the last season of Game of Thrones. It's been a long time and everybody deserves a second chance, basically. Plus, I didn't really know that they had produced this show when I started watching it, so they sort of get a pass. We will never mention the last season of Game of Thrones ever again. Okay, this particular show is fantastic. It raises some great morality questions. What does it mean to be right? Can one person judge the entire human race? Now, we'll get more into that later because the show is only one part of the show's story. This is where it gets interesting. I know. A man called Lin Qi bought the rights to the book in 2014. He was this young millennial gaming billionaire, and he wanted to create this like Star Wars-like universe from the story. He also bought the rights to two other books in the trilogy. Now, his company is called Yuzu Games, or Yuzu in English, and he set up this subsidiary company called the Three-Body Universe. Okay. Now, Lin Qi hired a lawyer called Zhu Yao, I'm butchering all these names, I apologize, to run this three-body universe for an annual salary of 20 million yuan, or $2.76 million. Zhu failed to produce the results that were expected, and for $3 million a year, you better produce those results. So Lin demoted Zhu and cut his pay to a quarter of what it was, or 5 million yuan, which is still $700,000. Come on, that's a lot of money. Anyway, Zhu did not take this well. He began to plot against Lin. He set up this shell company and bought like 160 burner phones so that he could buy poisons off the dark web. Then he built a lab in the suburbs. Now, apparently Zhu was a big fan of Breaking Bad, and he thought, I should have a lab for all of my schemes. At this lab, he tested poisons on pets, like cats, dogs, gerbils, etc. So this man is really a psychopath. But even worse, he does show his ambition and his work ethic in trying to poison his boss. Why didn't he put that energy into his work? I'd be mad too. I'd demote him too. Focus. Anyway, Zhu gave Lin pills he said were probiotics, but they were deadly poisons. It was a combination of various poisons. And he also poisoned his replacement at the company, which is supremely petty. Now, Lin languished in the hospital for 10 days, and during this time, Zhu refused to say which poisons he used so that the doctors might have given him an antidote. Instead, Lin died, and the 4 other colleagues whom Lin poisoned survived. Zhu was sentenced to death for his crimes. Dude is a straight-up villain. He is a villain. Torturing animals, smiling to these people's faces, and then poisoning them, and poison is such a villain method. I'm going to link these articles at the bottom if you want more details, more grisly details into this. It's not very pleasant, but it's serial killer stuff. It is actually serial killer stuff. If those 4 other people had died, he would be considered a serial killer. And maybe he killed others. Go check his past. Check this man's past. Anyway, So now that we've covered the drama behind the making of the three-body problem, we can move on to the show itself. Kinda, sorta. Okay, we'll get there. The show opens at a university in Beijing in 1966 during the Cultural Revolution in China. Students are chanting, "Root out the bugs, destroy all monsters and demons." Now, this is ironic. This is ironic because just a few years before this, people of China were tasked with rooting out pests during the Four Pests campaign. They were supposed to kill rats and mosquitoes and flies and sparrows. Sparrows! And they did kill the sparrows. Now, unfortunately for them, in killing the sparrows, they opened the door for locusts, which destroyed their crops and led to the Great Famine. We're talking about 20 to 50 million man-made deaths. Did they learn their lesson? No. No one ever learns a lesson from history. This might as well be a TV show. People learn more lessons from TV shows. Moving on. The students in the crowd. These were the Red Guard, by the way, and they were chanting, "Rebellion is just, revolution is righteous." Now, professors were thrown on the crowd's mercy, and the first one that we see begs their forgiveness, and he's allowed to live. We see the protagonist, this young girl, and she's in the crowd. She sees her father, a physics professor, killed for refusing to denounce the theory of relativity. The mob says that Einstein was an imperialist who helped build the atomic bomb. Einstein did not work on the atomic bomb, but his theory made nuclear technology possible. Now, this is what happens when you have people who didn't graduate making your talking points. We need expert hooligans to tell us accurately why we should beat this old man to death. Not this kid who has failed Physics 101 or Philosophy of Science. Both, probably. Now, the professor refuses, and he is beaten to death in front of the mob. I'm not spoiling anything. This is the opening scene. Even his wife denounces him, so the mother. Only his daughter is loyal to him. Now, the story follows the daughter for the rest of the season. She's one of the main characters, but we'll come back to that later. That is very important. For now, the Cultural Revolution. I knew something about it, but nothing extensive. Then I'm on Twitter, now known as X, and I come across this thread by this man named Andrew Cote, which describes the Cultural Revolution in Guangxi province. Guangxi. I'm butchering all these names. I apologize. And how truly barbaric it became. Of course, it's Twitter. So I'm half assuming that his thread is going to end with a link to his OnlyFans. It didn't. So points for him. But then I assume he's a lying bot and I have to research everything he's saying so I don't repeat false information. Turns out it's true. All of this is true. In Guangxi province, 100,000 to 150,000 people were brutally slaughtered during the revolution, in the name of revolution. The method of executions were brutal. They included beheadings, disembowelments, burning alive, stoning to death, and among many, many others. Intellectuals were targeted all over China, also in this province, but all over China, because the point of the Cultural Revolution was to destroy the old culture and bring in a new one. Who holds the old culture? It's up here. The learned. That will come up again many times in history. Knowledge is power, but not as powerful as a bullet, at least not on the day of. So don't get cocky with this knowledge. Be careful if you're an intellectual. Anyway, what is truly shocking is that cannibalism occurred. Yes, you heard that right. Cannibalism. Cannibalism! Between 137 and 421 people were ritualistically eaten. It was part of a bonding ritual among these revolutionaries. This is not a history lesson about the Cultural Revolution, which is fascinating, but we do have to discuss this particular aspect. Communism is the religion here, and these people, these intellectuals and these landowners, they were the human sacrifices. The group, the revolutionaries, would share their meat, their bodies during parties. So all the members were complicit in their murder and their being eaten, cannibalism. Oh, and we are familiar with blood sacrifices on this channel. We talked about it just last week on the CP podcast. Magical spells are given power through blood sacrifice. Now, we take on the body and the blood of Christ in the Catholic Church. Now, that is supposed to replace the blood sacrifice in religion in general. But the concept of the blood of Christ is still there. They take this to the next level in Guangxi province. Don't ever let anyone ever tell you that secular religions are less harmful than superstitious religions, because we see here that they are not. We also see the depths of the depravity that people are willing to go to when they believe that they are in the right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's like signs all over the place, and it sounds all cutesy until you bring up the cannibalism. Now it's serious. Then you realize how deeply flawed the moral judgment of the mob actually is. Honestly, I don't particularly blame China or communism for this. We've discussed how many groups and social movements can do horrendous, horrendous things to each other. The Bolshevik Revolution is one. It's another one that we discuss a lot, particularly on my Patreon. Then you've got your fascism and your religious crusades. This is not unique to any people or race, in my opinion. Okay, this is a human flaw. Maybe this is the original sin that we're constantly being warned about. But in my opinion, we can only guard against this by adhering to strict moral and legal laws and trusting those laws above our own human whims, because our own whims can lead to cannibalism. So the point of that tangent was Cultural Revolution was bad, humans flawed, misanthropy winning? I don't know. Well, that brings me to the actual show. That girl, Ye Wenji, who we saw holding her dead father, a man murdered by the vile mob. She is not the protagonist. She is actually the villain. Spoiler alert, she goes to work for the Communist Party as a scientist. She finds a signal from an alien planet, and this planet is part of a two-star system, and therefore the planet is unstable. This is why the show is called the three-body problem. You can solve a two-body gravitational problem. The one's gravity is working on the other. But once you introduce that third variable, you get an unsolvable problem. Newton was looking into this. Now, I got an email with this link to this article from Business Insider about the three-body problem. The gist is, they still haven't solved it. Update, nothing has changed in 350 years. Okay, thank you, Business Insider. I feel this is the opposite of news. This is the lack of news. Nevertheless, I will link the article so that you can learn more about the three-body problem. Now, if you want to learn more about how the three-body problem is kind of a precursor to the modern science of chaos, read Chaos by James Gleick. I cannot stress this book enough. It is easily my favorite nonfiction book. I told you all to read it last year, so I'm assuming my regulars are already familiar with chaos theory. Love you, regulars. You're so hardworking. Moving on. So their planet, the alien planet, is fucked. What is the solution? Migration. Back to the story. Yi gets a message from the alien race. They're called the Sante. It says, is anyone out there? And she gets another message that says, do not respond. My people mean you harm. Now, Ye has a choice to make. Do I respond to this great possibility for a new future, or do I protect the human race? Do I conserve what we have? And she tells the aliens to come because humans cannot help themselves. Later in the season, we see that there is a cult to the Sante, which has formed, and even later, that cult has spread across the population. Many people decide to side with humanity's destruction. Now, for the misanthropes following me because of that video, the miserable misanthrope, do you agree with this rogue cult? Would you side against the human race? Honest answers, it's fine. Be honest. It is my opinion that a lot of us would side against the human race, at least at some point in our lives, maybe at the lowest point in our lives. They would side with humanity's destruction. We see on the streets of America, people chanting death to America. So don't tell me that this wouldn't happen in real life. That's why it's a great show. Now, when you see Ye's story, you understand why she felt this way. In my opinion, it just wasn't her right. It's not her choice to make. This is her pride, and pride is the devil's sin. Thank you, Miss Needs, 9th grade English Lit. Pride is the devil's sin, Julius Caesar. And that's as far as we're going to go into the story for today. I want to make a follow-up to this, and if you want one, just bug me for it in the comments. You know how I am, a little forgetful, kind of busy. There's a lot more to discuss about this, and I do discuss it more on various platforms, Patreon, CP Podcast, but that's it for this video. Thank you so much, and subscribe.